Gassman, welcome to this presentation. I'm here with my friend and mentor, David Finkel. David is the author of a number of excellent books, including back behind him there, you see the book Scale, which really put him on the map and made him a Wall Street Journal best-selling author, and Build a Business, Not a Job, which has been, both books have been very, very significant to me in my practice. David operates an amazing organization called Maui Mastermind. Maui Mastermind has coached hundreds and hundreds of successful businesses that use Maui Mastermind's systems typically have a very, very nice jump in income and free time the first year. And many of us have stayed with David because I'm a customer of Maui Mastermind also. In fact, he's my personal coach. We've stayed with him for many years because he knows what we need to do in many ways better than we do. So I'm very excited about this presentation, the 2025 version of David Finkel, which keeps getting better and better. And I'm going to
Grayer
turn
and grayer.
this over to David. And I'm going to tell you
Alan,
something that I'm going to just mention one thing that a business coach once told me. He said his best clients don't question his advice, they just do it. And then he has very, very smart clients who question his advice and never even try it. So maybe today during this 1 hour video presentation, you'll think of a couple of things in your business that you'll stop doing and a couple of things in your business that maybe you'll try to start doing. Let's definitely get some impact out of this presentation by putting yourself into the role of what am I going to do differently after the next 58 minutes. So David, I'm turning it over to you.
I really appreciate that, Alan. It made me smile. Yeah, it's amazing. I'll have these incredibly bright clients that'll be with one of our coaches, and some of these people are, PhDs, very hyper specialized physicians, and they're exceptionally bright, but sometimes they'll overanalyze a simple business move and they'll be surprised or shocked. Wow, I've only grown 15%, but this person over here grew, 55%. Why? Why? I'm smarter. And your comment is well taken there. We'll smile and we'll laugh with that. Oops, the camera, I hit the wrong button versus share. All right. So we're gonna get started. Today we're going to talk about something really near and dear to most business owners' heart, right? How do we get past where we're at and work scaling up the ladder? And I'm going to share, Alan, with everyone today what I call the untold story of scaling your business. We have the picture that's given in the media, and it's usually two different stories. Story one of scaling a company are the technology unicorns, and those are a small handful with the clients that we tend to work with. And quite frankly, it's a small fraction of a percent of the businesses in the United States. Most businesses they're meat and potato companies. It's a medical practice with 9 clinics. It's a restaurant with 4 locations. It's a manufacturer. It's a blue collar services business. It's a consulting company, a professional services firm. It's not technology companies don't tend to be the ones that run most of that. So the media gets the story all wrong. They don't really talk about that. So I'm going to share what I call the 5 hidden pitfalls today that trap 99% of the businesses at under the second step of this ladder that we'll get in and talk about. And of course, for people, it's a big deal. So I'll start with this question, Alan. What is it that business owners actually want from their business, right? The people we deal with that have successful companies, they want profit. They want to serve and help people. They want time freedom. That's a big one for them. They want a place that they can feel engaged and grow. They want a way to create an impact in the world. They want to build something. That's what we see. And so hearing that, what is it that really that takes to grow a business? You want to grow it. And the story that's in the media is, well, just do more, work harder. And the way they'll call it nowadays, it used to be they'd say, just work harder. Nowadays, they say grind. That's a really big theme. You'll see a lot of YouTube influencers talking about, hey, I'm going to grind out 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week, 80 hours a week. And that is just really, really counterproductive. The first pitfall, share, Alan, is people are just building off the wrong roadmap. If you're building off the time and effort roadmap, you're not going to get where you want to go. And think about it this way. You have 2 doors that you're looking at in a business. As an owner, this is the first decision you get to make. Which doorway am I going to go through? On the left-hand side of the doorway is the door marked control. Hey, stay in charge. Don't let other people make decisions. They'll screw it up. You should personally work harder. You should personally produce or personally manage the people producing more. Make the decisions yourself. You can't trust anybody else. Door number two recognizes something different. So door number one, control, it leads to the self-employment trap. You're going to reach a point that you're not going to grow anymore. You're going to reach a point that you are just have hit the ceiling of what your company can produce if you're at the middle and everything revolves around you. When you build for control, it does not scale. Door number two is the door marked freedom. It says, hey, the model is not to build the business around me. The model is, how do I build a scalable, profitable business that would be even independent of me? Not all in one move. I'm not going to tomorrow walk in and tell all my employees, let's say I've got, 21 employees. I'm not going to come in and say, hey, this is my last day. You won't see me again. You're going to take over the company. Of course not. It's a progression over time. We're going to develop our team. We're going to implement internal systems and controls. We're going to reduce the reliance incrementally on us. And that's what leads to a scalable business. And you were, not taught to do this. It's just the truth. And look, no one was taught to build a business this way. No one was taught that way. Alan, I started off as an athlete. 30 years ago, I was training to play in the Olympics, and I got hurt, and that dream went away, and I started scrambling. What was I going to do next? Well, the first round in building a company that I eventually sold and exited, I did it the time and effort way. I mean, my partner and I, we brute forced it. And it was easy because I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and I had no kids. My wife was happy because we were newlyweds, and working 60, 70 hours a week was normal for me because I was someone who, in my sport career, I really worked hard. And so that company had a great exit. But what I realized in the second company was, oh my gosh, I just had twin sons. This is now going back roughly 16 years ago. I don't want to build it this way. There's no way I'm going to build a company the same way. What do I do different? And it was a scramble to figure out how to scale a company differently. And for what it's worth, Alan, I mean, this is something I know you and I have talked about in our coaching sessions, but I try to eat our own cooking in our company. We work with several hundred companies in the $1 to $100 million range. And right now, the Maui companies, I work a typical 40-hour week, but I take 5 months off. And actually, I found that taking the time off, now that my kids are older, my youngest is about to turn 13, they don't want to hang around with. I can't imagine this, Alan. My kids don't want to hang. I'm no longer cool to my kids. It just seems so wrong. But the point being with this part, I'll probably work a little bit more just because I want to. But that choice, we'll get to that in the fifth point here, this concept of optionality. But coming back to it, what I'm going to share with everyone here today, you were taught to build a job, not a business. That's what the common person was taught. And it just is what it is. And I can remember when all that changed for me. I was there. My wife told me finally, after 5 years of trying to get pregnant, she's pregnant now with twins. And I'm like, this current workload cannot stand. And so I want to walk through, Alan, is really a quick model for everybody about how businesses go in the United States. And we're going to share where we're going to go for this. So let me pull up this model here. All right. So as we look at this here, and typically there's about 33.2 million small, mid-sized, and large companies in the U.S. That's the total number of businesses in the U.S. And of those, only 5%, so 1 in 20 ever make it past $1 million in revenue. 95% of businesses never make it past $1 million in the United States, which is crazy. Clearly, they're the ones who are self-employed. Hey, I am basically have my business to hold me as an employee so that I can do my work in an entity, but it's just I'm billing myself time and effort. And of that, here's where I want to share, Alan, only 1 in 5 of this 5%, which is 1%, about 332 businesses, ever make it over 10 million. And if we keep going down there for that number, about 1 in 15 of those 1 in 5 will make it over 15, about 1 in 15 will make it over 100 million. And the number gets from there, gets down to about 1 in 20 of the over 100 million that make it over $1 billion. Because of time, we only have an hour. Give me a couple days, which I'll talk about some ways that some of the clients who are here today with you, Alan, that might be able to join us. complimentary for an advanced workshop we're teaching in Florida, which is the first time we've done that in about 2 years, coming up in February. But today we're going to focus on how do you break this $10 million barrier? That's where we'll probably spend most of our time since we only have that hour here. And the thresholds are a bit arbitrary. 1 million, 10 million, 50 million, billion. I mean, the barrier at $10 million strikes businesses at 6 million or at 16 million, but somewhere between that range, the business qualitatively needs to change to be able to break that threshold. The things that are there to take you to that $1 million business need to change for you as you grow further with that. So what is the 1%, that 1% that break the $10 million barrier? What do they do and know that 99% of business owners don't, that 99% of business owners aren't doing? And I think that's an important question for people. So this is a conversation I've had in great depth. This is a book I wrote with my friend Jeff Hoffman. And we wanted people to blow through that 1 and that $10 million barrier when we wrote that book, and to reach that 50 or that $100 million level. And so Jeff and I were having this conversation. Now, he had scaled a number of businesses like I had, but he had done it at a bigger scale. I built businesses that are worth in the tens of millions of dollars or more, but he's built a multi-billion-dollar companies, including Priceline.com. He was one of the CEOs in that family of companies. And one of the things we talked about was where the common business owner is operating their business just on so many myths, so many things that are wrong. And the biggest one I'll share, Alan, for them is they're building for control. Every business owner who's been in business for 5 years or more, who's reached at least $1 million, they've all had a moment where I call the, oh, can I say bad words on this? Am I allowed to?
As many as you can.
Okay, as many as I can. Those mother, no, oh shit. I don't tend to curse too often, but they had that moment where they handed off to some other team member, and the team member either didn't do a good job or dropped the ball completely. And Alan, what they learned from that lesson is you cannot trust other people, right? If you want something done well, you better do it yourself. And unfortunately, that's a really poor lesson to learn. What they didn't learn was maybe it was how they handed off. Maybe what they didn't learn is maybe it's who you handed it off to, or maybe it was you didn't have the system of internal controls to make sure things got accountable and followed through on. And so they learn the wrong lesson, and as a result, they stay stuck in that earlier business. And I'm going to share it this way, a more advanced version of that model. We call this the level 3 business model. Level 1 is your startup. Level 2 is that owner-reliant company. You got early, middle, and advanced stage. Early stage, you're trying to get early profitability. How do I reach enough sales so I'm profitable? Most people who are joining us today and all the clients we work with, they already are at middle stage or advanced stage level 2 when we start with them. They've already built a company that is profitable. Not as profitable as they want. Hey, David, I'm making 200 grand. Can you help me make $1 million? Hey, David, I'm making $1 million. Can you help me make $2.5 million? But the point being is, that middle stage distinction is that business still is around the owner. As you start to build out the systems, the leadership and management team, and the internal controls and the culture that says this, you start grooming into an advanced stage level 2 and eventually into a level 3 company that really is independent of the owner. So this is the simplified roadmap. The more fancy version, Alan, you know about this as a coaching client, where we break down what are the key milestones, systems, controls, and team that you need. But for today, this is enough. We're going to be talking about how do we make this leap here from the middle and advanced stage towards level 3? That's the important piece that we're going to be focusing on today. Because the real goal that we're going for is not to build a living for ourselves. A lot of people who are in this middle stage or early stage level 2, they see their company as a way to make a living, which there's nothing wrong with it. That's a noble thing. But to become that 1% or that 0.1%, what requires of us is to really look to how do I build a scalable, profitable business that by definition means one that becomes independent of me, the owner. I might bring value to it, but it's more than just me. And I'll share a story about this. So this is actually a joint client of ours. I know Tom Santilli has done lots of work with you. So Tom built this really powerful wholesaling business selling technology equipment, right? Was one of the first people selling on a secondary market. He built a marketplace for this. His company Xbyte, and this is him at one of our events. It was actually in Hawaii. Cool place to be at a workshop if you need to be at a place. And I still remember this email I got from him, Alan, where he says, "Today I announce my retirement to the company." Now, when we first met him, Tom was working 70, 75 hours a week. He was working probably 2.5 weeks of vacation a year. He had kids. He was married, hurting his health. And Tom did not want to change. He didn't. It was actually his wife, Alan. I didn't find this out till about a year after we started working together, where Tom finally admitted this. His wife signed him up for the workshop, the first one he ever went to. And she said, "Look, something's got to change. Left to your own, you're not going to change." And the difference was he scaled the company 4x, but the biggest change was he built the business to incrementally over the course of about 4.5, 5 years, not need him anymore. And as a result, he was able to send that lovely email out to his company and announce it to the community about that. So the second pitfall I say is building your company in isolation. And I have a brand new story I have to share about this. This is someone I care about. It's actually a friend of mine here locally where I live. I won't mention names, but this is a guy, Alan, I really, really care about. And he has a successful business locally, but he's got no peer group around that. He's got no one that he talks to about this stuff. I mean, yes, we'll get together and my kids like his kids. My wife adores his wife. I really enjoy them as well. So we've done things together. We've done a little vacations here and there. But I just found out from my wife recently that in his business life, he sold half of his, actually 51% of his company to a private equity firm, Alan, and they're screwing him over. And the big thing is, everything that's going wrong for him, I could have told him exactly how to protect himself. And this is really common. It's the business owner who says, I know it all myself, or more commonly, what they say is, I don't want to bother someone, or they're a little bit embarrassed that they don't know all the answers. So building your company in isolation, to anyone on here today, that's probably the most dangerous thing you could do. Had he merely reached out to have some outside conversations, he would have saved himself so much grief. And we're talking, probably mid 7 figures in terms of financially is what he would have saved himself. He's now probably going to be in for 2 or 3 years of litigation. It's going to destroy the business. Nobody wins from that part. So building your business in isolation is a big deal. As we get on that one, I just want to share for everyone on here, Alan, I know that you're going to be a keynote speaker at the Breakthrough Company event in February 2026. It's a 3-day event. We're doing it, and the dates for it are right here, February 20, 21, and 22 in Orlando. The last time we were in Orlando was 2 years ago. Alan, you were also keynote for that one, which I appreciate. You, myself, and Kevin Bassett talking on the tax strategy side. That event will be a deep dive strategic planning on how do you scale your company faster, make it more owner independent to reclaim your life back, so the business can thrive without you. That's what we talk about with the Breakthrough Company. I'll talk more at the end about it, but I just want to put it out there for everyone to save the dates for it. If you are a client of Alan, he has arranged for a block of tickets for that event for you, taking care of that, and it's part of him being a keynote there, speaker. And you can reach out to Alan's office or get on the question field right now and talk to Maggie Fox, who's in my office, who's on there to answer questions if you have about the dates or et cetera from those parts. But all of that is there, and you can be our guests, or actually, technically speaking, Alan's guest there. So I want to make people aware of that. All right. So I was going to share a different story here, but I'm going to skip that one. That one, Alan, I was talking to my wife literally a week ago about it, and I felt my heart just really just did just sunk in my chest. And I know what it's like. I mean, having seen other clients who have told us after the fact that they've signed certain contracts versus beforehand, it's like, please don't do this yourself. Let us help. Which brings us to pitfall number 3. When you do it yourself, we start to do it. It used to be, I'd say people just would do longer hours. Nowadays, they like to say, I'm hustling. I've got my side hustle. I'm hustling. All these 30-something influencers on Instagram love talking about, hustling and hustle scale stress. It does not lead to freedom. It does not. The harder you work, the more dependent your business becomes on you for your production. The harder you work leading and directing and directly managing the producers, the more your producers and your company become dependent on you to be there for the company to be successful. and it's a mistake. And so what's the way out of that, right? How do we do this part of it? We've got to scale out before we can scale up. That's a fancy thing to say. What does that actually mean? Scaling out means I've got to start removing myself and putting other people and internal systems and processes and controls at the center of the business, and then I can scale up. If I make those, the business itself at the center, not me, the owner, but the business at the heart, now I can start to scale up. I've got to scale out before I can scale up, which leads me to this comment here. So a level 3 business is really the escape from this chaotic move of a founder who's doing everything. At level 1, this is going back to that model, you, the owner, do everything. At level 2, you have some help, but you're still right there in the middle of it. That help revolves around you. At level 3, the business is a machine. The business operates. So I couldn't take 3 months off in the summertime if my business wasn't strong enough to handle that. And so I'm the architect, not the engine. I've got good leaders in parts of the business. Clients have good systems in place. Their team is cross-trained on those systems. We have solid internal controls to make sure the right things happen at the right time in the right way. And because of that, you're able to step away from the business, or you can stay involved, but you play a role in there, not doing everything. You're not the gap catcher catching everything, which leads to pitfall number 4. And we will make sure, Alan, I'll carve out time at the end. So if as I'm going through here, anyone on here has questions, we'll make sure we carve some time out at the end. But we've got to build a business with depth. We call this strategic depth. And I'm going to share a story about this in a moment, but let me just define what strategic depth is. And I'm going to do that, Alan, by defining the problem. You're a business owner and you started to build real momentum. Your team is firing on all cylinders. Your clients are loving what you're doing. Sales are growing and you're starting to hit that upper part of the curve there on the compounded annual growth curve. And then something happens. An employee who you depended on leaves the business. Perhaps her elderly parents need her to move to a different state and she can't work remotely. Perhaps the performance of someone you have in your business, he's no longer performing and you have to exit him through some behavior that he should not have done or done consistently. And when that happens, all that momentum dies. And you and your company are thrown into the firefighting mode of how do we solve this? How do we put this fire out? And all that momentum's died, and now we got to build it all up again. That's what happens without strategic depth. And I'll share a story that makes it even more clear about this. So this is Tammy and Mark. They owned a simple bread and butter business, a flooring company. They had a couple locations in the Midwest. And I remember having this conversation with them. This is them actually winning what's called the Freedom Award every year at our annual awards banquet, which we'll be doing at the February Breakthrough Company event. Clients who have been able to significantly increase their owner independence, they win an award. In the middle of Tammy on the left and Mark on the right, you see Steve Maxwell, their coach. And here's the cool part. They grew their revenue by 27%. And this is common, right? Growth of revenue. But because their profit margins, their gross and their operating profit margins grew faster, they actually grew their operating profit, their pre-tax profit from their operation of business by 132% at the same time. Everyone was on cloud 9 about that. But here's the thing that really stood out. At this award ceremony, Tammy was saying a few words about her experiences, and her comment was her dad had just recently had a major health challenge in a different state. And her comment was if she had not done the work to start building out the internal systems, the staff that could start to take on some more of the management and entering into the leadership. She wasn't a level 3 company at that point, but she was, before joining us, a middle stage company. She had went to an advanced stage level 2 company. And she said, I was able to go and be there with him. And before she started doing this work, Alan, she would have had a choice to make. Either care for her dad and let the business go to pot, or let her dad deal with it remotely as best she could with nurses and health aides and stay there for her business, which is a horrible choice. I don't want any business owner to have that choice. First of course, no one wants that to happen. And she was able to go there. Her business for several months was okay. and she came back and she hadn't lost the momentum with that. And we've taught these concepts in several forms, but there are really 4 core levers to simplify to make the taking action a little bit easier. So the first lever to build this, to go from a middle stage to an advanced stage, is systems, right? Your repeatable processes and procedures. And here's a quote that I love. This is actually one of my team members came up with this, Alan. They said, "You don't rise to the level of your hustle, you fall to the level of your systems." You can get hustle to work for a while, but an emergency is going to happen. It always does. And if you don't have good systems, you're going to now fall right back to where you started the hustle. Hustle is like, I work hard and build, and I fall. I work hard and I fall. It's like a ocean waves, like a surfer. There's always the next wave. There's always the next wave. I just get out past this break. Now the next wave hits me. With systems, it lets you get above the waves themselves to work on the business versus being stuck in the business. You don't rise to the level of your hustle, you fall to the level of your systems. And systems deliver without extraordinary heroic efforts. Hey, I don't want Mighty Mouse to save the day. I want my competent, capable staff with strong systems to together create magic. Onboarding checklist, maybe it's a quality process, maybe it's a template for how I communicate with my clients, maybe it's a delivery process or a timeline. Consistency scales. Heroes, they burn out. They become like the phoenix, but they don't rise from the ashes too often. All right. So examples of marketing or sales systems might be things like the funnels that I build for marketing funnels, or maybe I have a lead qualification system, or maybe it's a sales call framework or sales scripting or automated follow-up email to nurture new people in your database. And I'll give an example for it. This is Julie, who has a financial wealth advisory company. And so Julie was her plus 2 team members when we first started working with her. Now she's grown and basically doubled the size. Actually, at this point, she's 3x the size of her company. This is a little out of date. Part of that was through building out of her systems, growing her team and grooming her team. She did get growth because she bought out a competitor. She was doing so well managing her part that by buying a competitor who wanted to retire, she took on all their clients and was able to buy growth that way. But the point I would make for Julie here is you have to make your systems where now that you can teach others how to operate pieces of the business. Most importantly, though, and Alan, I'm going to share this, I want to make this point really, really big, which is it is not enough to just have systems. I have to have some team member who owns a functional responsibility. If I just go to Julie and say, Julie, here's the system, you own it, that's different than saying, hey, Julie, I want you to follow the system. If I say just follow the system and it goes wrong, she's going to say, well, I checked all the box, David. But if she owns the outcome and she checks the box and it's not working, she's responsible for troubleshooting. She's responsible for saying, hey, David, I'm checking the boxes. We're not getting the result. I tried this and this. I'm still struggling. Can you help? So she can pull you, perhaps the person in the business who has more experience, back in if need be, but she owns the outcome. She owns the result. So we don't just delegate someone to use a system. We delegate that they use the system to create a result, and they own the result, the functional responsibility. And when we do that bit by bit by bit in the business, this is how you free yourself up, which leads us to the second lever for making that shift here. And that lever is what we call team, right? We need good team with that. You're not building employees, you're building business owners. And I smile when I say this, and people all the time say, well, Alan, David, are you saying I should give them all immediate equity? I'm not saying that. When I talk about building a business owner, an employee says, there's a 5-step process. I did step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm done. It's not on me. I did the process. I want Julie to be an owner. She does the 5 steps, but if she sees at step 3 it's not working, she has to troubleshoot, figure it out, or raise the red flag and saying, hey, I need help. What else can we try to make adjustments because we're not getting the outcome we want? So I want not employees, I want owners, business owners, people who own functional areas of responsibility. And when I do that, it changes everything. And I'll give another example for that. this idea of building strategic depth, for example, we'll talk about this is an action plan. So one of the things we do with clients is we make sure that every quarter they have action plans. But this is a client of ours, Blake Schwank. He's now become a dear friend after, I want to say he's been a client, Alan, even a little bit longer than you. I think he's been a client for, I'm thinking for 14 or 15 years now. So maybe a few years further than you. But in any case, he owns an IT services company, very successful. When we first met him, they were a company that was Blake plus some technicians that went in the field. And he had one really good senior technician that did IT in the field. And one of the first things he started doing was to start putting processes and procedures in place and started cross-training his team. And he was so lucky because about a year and a half into working together, his best technician in the field, who was the one that allowed Blake not to have to be out there making nearly as many technical calls, quit. Said, hey, I'm moving to California. I got an offer I couldn't refuse. And I'm moving from Colorado to California. And I'm leaving this week. And you can imagine the stress that was. Blake's comment was that for him, had that happened before the old way, would have been 2 to 3 months that they would have stopped everything growing and focus on just recovery, recovery, recovery. He said because we had good systems, we had things like every client had a certain file structure wherein they knew what the passwords were and what the administration hierarchy was and who the key players were, so that Blake and his team were able to reassign all those clients. Now, it was stressful. He says it was about a week to a week and a half of great stress, but it didn't derail his growth. And over the course of the next 5 years, they went from $500,000 in revenue to over $5 million in revenue. And if they had not done that work, they would have gotten to their 1 million point and they would have just fallen right off the map. So if you want to get to that $10 million barrier, you need momentum, which means that you need to start building out and cross-training owners of these things to make it happen. All right, which leads me to lever 3, because people say it all the time, David, I'm scared to get my team to own a functional responsibility. What if they make a mistake? What if I don't hear about it until after it happens? Alan, there was a woman we worked with who owned a glass company. Not eyeglasses, but like shower glasses and things for bathrooms. It was a custom business. And I remember talking with her and she said, David, I've tried this before to scale. We tripled in size, but all it meant was 3 times the work. And as I asked more questions, her path to scale and triple was hustle. So she went from working 30 hours to essentially working 80 to 90 hours a week. And of course, that wasn't sustainable. So we started talking with her about putting in good systems, cross-training your team on those systems, and getting owners of those pieces. And she had some things go wrong that her team didn't tell her about. I said, okay, but remember we talked about internal controls? You weren't doing that. Let's go back to that. Let's regroup around that. So if you don't rise to the level of your hustle, you fall to the level of your systems. Controls are a really important specialty type of system. And there are 3 types of controls. Controls, not control with no S, controls with an S. That's everything. This S is what makes it significant, supersonic. That was one of my favorite songs growing up. All right, visual, procedural, and embedded controls, 3 kinds. Let's go through them here. So if we look at it, a visual control is a way for you to see what's going on. A checklist that I can see that steps were checked off. It could also be like, for example, when Jeff and I did the book Scale, we created a bonus website that was off that book that all the readers could, if they bought the book, could get this bonus website. And we wanted to give a design tool to the designer of the website. And so we created a style guide. They could visually see these are the fonts, these are the colors we wanted. It was a visual way to control for that. Visual controls. A KPI is a visual control. A scoreboard is a visual control. The second type of controls are procedural controls. Hey, step 1, step 2, step 3. Or to have a procedural control for how you handle expenses. Telling a team member for you, hey, if the expense is under $100, make the decision right there. If it's over 100 but less than 500, just run it by your manager. And if they have a problem, they'll let you know within 24 hours. If not, go ahead. If it's over 500 but less than 1,000, you need them to sign off on that. If it's over 1,000, this is what you do. Or a control for price exceptions. Hey, in these specific circumstances, you're allowed to go from our normal pricing of $50,000 to $45,000 as a price break, but only in these circumstances. And you need your sales manager to sign off on it just to not make it too easy, for example. Those are procedural controls. And there's a third type of control, we'll call it embedded controls. And these are my favorite, Alan. This is where we make the right type of behavior automatically done from the system. We take the playing field, if you can think about it, and we tilt it so that the playing field makes the behavior what we want. So this can include things like automated drip email sequences. As long as we set them up the right way, every new prospect that comes in will get the same delivery. This on day 4, this on day 14, this on day 44. We can guarantee that. You'll love this one, standardized contracts. If I don't want sales team members making a stupid promise, I make sure they use my standardized boilerplate contract that says this supersedes all other oral representations, et cetera, et cetera. This is the agreement. If it's not in here, it doesn't exist. Now, of course, I still want my salespeople selling the right things and not over-promising, but the embedded control is a protection. Sales collateral is another example, or automated tracking through your website. These things automatically give the best sales comment or the best score tracking of what's going on, or automatically backing up stuff. We were talking on a negotiation I was helping on recently on Tuesday of this week. And as I was having this conversation, the counterpart in the conversation had no backups for their email, Alan. And because of that, we had good emails for the client I was working with on that one. And lo and behold, we got what we wanted. We have a very clear written trail. They didn't. We had automated backups. They didn't. They didn't have a process to do that. So automation, things that make the right behavior happen automatically. And here's the coaching for everybody. We as a business owner, if we want to break the $10 million barrier and start growing into the 20, 50, $100 million level, we've got to learn to intelligently hand off responsibility and ownership and also protect the company at the same time. Having great people using great systems, including good, solid internal controls, are what allows you to do that and still protect the business. That's really the most important, which leads us to the final lever. And we'll call this final lever alignment. And alignment matters a lot. How do we get our very best resources, time, talent, attention, money, to be focused in on the highest value things? What causes a company to get stuck at 6 million or at 16 million? Almost always the thing that causes it to get stuck is they are focusing on way too many different things. They're focusing on some great things, some good things, and some not very good things. And as a result, they waste this effort completely. They get suboptimal result from this effort, and they underfeed, undernourish their best stuff. And the phrase I would share with everyone on here today, Alan, feed your winners, starve your losers. On that spectrum, we take a look at our things that are not really producing, and we chop them. We eliminate them, we phase them out, we diversify away from them, and we take all that resource that was there and we put it into those 2 or 3 winners that get the best of us. And what happens is a lot of business owners get bored with their own business, and they want excitement and novelty more than they want growth and profit and freedom, which to my mind is insane. I tell clients this all the time, don't look for your business to be sexy. Look for your business to just be a juggernaut that consistently grows independent of you and in terms of revenue and profitability. If you really crave novelty, find it outside the business. Because in the business, what happens is owners start doing all kinds of pet projects that suck away resources, and you starve your best stuff. Every business has 1, 2, or 3 places that if they could only put more attention, more of their talent, more of their money, more of their time behind it, the business would grow not 6% a year, but 16% a year. Not 16% a year, but maybe 26% a year. And that's what we have to make sure that we can do. Not by doing more, not by going, well, I'm working 35 hours, let's work 45 hours to do this other stuff. No, to reduce this stuff and free it up to put it in your best stuff. That's the important part that we're talking about. And I'll give an example for this alignment challenge. So here's a CEO that we work with. This guy's name's Mark. He's a really nice man. And before he started going with the program, I remember a conversation. We talked at several events and other places, but he had a construction company. They did custom high-end home building. Like that's one of the homes that they built there in the bottom left of your screen. They did these beautiful homes, beautiful homes. And, Mark came to me and he said, David, oh, I love what you're talking about with priorities. I have priorities you wouldn't believe up the wazoo. And he says to me, David, I have 6 priorities for my company. I said, 6 priorities, really? Tell me about that. He says, priority number 1, priority number 1B, priority number 1C. What was the 4th priority, number 1D? Oh yeah, it was this. And then I can't remember priorities, 5 and 6 that were number 1. He couldn't even say them himself. And I smiled and I said, Mark, you're the CEO and you're the majority owner of this company. You're doing like 40 million a year in builds. Question for you. If you don't know what all 6 of your number 1 priorities are, is it even realistic that any of your staff do? And he's like, and he just paused. You could just see like a deer in the headlights for a moment. And what I said is, Mark, I want you to write these 3 words down. Changed everything. Less is more. We don't want 6 priorities. If I have 6 priorities, or heaven forbid, 12 priorities, I have no priorities. I want 1. I want maybe 3. And when we focus on those fewer, better things, you get real growth. I mean, for Mark, it was a $10 million the first year he started doing that. That's a big, significant thing. Even on a $40 million company, that's 25% growth in that part. So what we'll talk about here is we talk about this as an action plan. And what I've learned is I have to keep an action plan to 1 page. You can't see it here, but on the board over there, I've actually got the action plans for our company for the quarter. I've got the action plans for our operations leader, for our coaching leader, for our sales leader, for our marketing. I've got 1-page action plans for each of them. The way we do it is we say you can have no more than 3 focus areas every quarter. This is where your discretionary best attention goes, or for your staff if it's for a different area of the company. You have a company level plan, and then you'll have a department plan, provided you're a big enough company. If you're a smaller company, you'll just have a plan for just the company. And you might only have 2 focus areas or 1, but you can't have more than 3, and it's got to all fit on 1 page. By making that design constraint, clients focus on less, but the less they focus on matters a heck of a lot more. And we've learned that the 90-day plan works brilliantly. It's a running sprint for 90 days, then we stop, we regroup, and we now go for the next 90 days. And let's give an example of how this works. So this is Debbie and Ben. So they had 600% growth as we were working together in the program. They have a cleaning company. They do residential and commercial cleaning with that part. And for them, the biggest thing was having a 1-page plan that they could just hold up and point to. For them, it allowed them not to focus on so many different things. So Ben was kind of the behind the scenes person working in the finance part and the sales part. Debbie was doing the operational part with the cleaners. It was actually her company that she started. Ben was an engineer once upon a time, and he came into the business when it started being successful enough, full-time, quitting the engineering world for that part. And as a result of every quarter doing these action plans, it simplified what they focused on, and it gave them historic growth for them. And that's the key part, the consistency from that. And if you're saying, well, David, I don't know, I've never really done an action plan, let me just tell you, at that Breakthrough Company event, let me just quickly give a few highlights about what we're going to be doing. We're going to be talking about how do you go faster by, number 1, determining what are the biggest leverage points in your company. What are the 1 or 2 opportunities that you should focus on? What's the biggest thing that is your constraint to growth that you need to push back? What's the biggest risk that you're dealing with that you need to mitigate, prevent, so you don't deal with the fire and the cost of the fire later on? How do we prevent the fire to begin with? And so we'll do that. But on the 3rd day of that event, everyone, yourself included, we're going to boil that down to, it'll take us about an hour and 15 minutes. We have a structured process for it. Everything you've been learning at the event, you're going to narrow it down to a 1-page action plan. And if possible, if you have 1 or 2 other key leaders in your company who are what we call a grow player, let me just make a quick distinction, Alan. A role player is someone who wants to do their job really well, but they don't want to grow beyond the job. A grow player says, hey, I want to do my job really well, but I want to grow, take on new challenges, evolve in this business. If I've got a really good leader or two leaders who are grow players, bring them with you to the event with my suggestion so that you can have a company plan and perhaps a one-page plan for your marketing pillar or for your operations or production pillar. It makes a big difference with that part. So that event itself will be part doing and also part getting a chance to interact and upgrade your peer group. It'll be anywhere from past events, probably 125 to maybe 200 business owners there. It's a really cool part. So again, I'll talk about that more in a moment, but I just want to point it out. If you're not knowing how to do an action plan, don't worry about it. We can walk you through exactly how to do that. So it leads me to the fifth pitfall, Alan, and then we'll have probably pretty soon enough time to do questions if people have them on here, which is you as the business owner not seeing all your options as the owner of a business that truly is successful. What do I mean by this? I think this is a really important one to look at. When I think about this, once we replace you from the center and put the business in the center there, what happens is now we have lever 5, right? We have this ability to have optionality. And optionality is something that almost no one ever talks about, but you'll hear it a lot in our client community because our clients love options. Specifically, you have the option of either continuing to grow your company because the role you now play is significantly more enjoyable. You're no longer feeling all the stress of having to keep every plate spinning as I rush back and forth like a plate spinner. Because you put the business at the center and the business is markedly less reliant on you, it's growing faster and it's more enjoyable to own, which means maybe you choose not to sell it. There are a lot of people I know who have sold their company at the $7 million revenue mark or the $15 million mark. And the only reason they sold it was because they felt they had maxed out what they could personally produce for the company. When you replace yourself from the middle and make the business owner independent, that's no longer the constraint. To go from 10 to 20, from 20 to 40, from 40 to $100 million, it doesn't require the owner to work more. Matter of fact, the owner cannot hustle enough to make that growth happen. They've got to get the business with its people, its systems, its internal controls, and the culture that makes all that stay together work without them, which now gives them the option. The real reward, the real prize, I think, at the end of the rainbow of building a level 3 company, it's not just that you have a business that's now worth 10 million, 25 million, $100 million or more. The real pot of gold rainbow prize at the end of the rainbow is the option to either stay in the business because you love it, just changing your role, or to sell it and go do something else. Both are choices that you have. And that power to choose, in my opinion, is everything. Because I know a lot of people who felt physically, I can't keep doing this, or they sold the company, they had to, and then they're like, well, what do I do now? I feel bored. Retirement, not all it's cracked up to be. So I'll share a quick story about this. This is Paul Robinson. Paul owns a company in California, a technology company. And in Paul's case, he was the classic solopreneur. It was him plus 2 contractors that he subbed out parts of work doing his technology work as a consultant. And he made probably $225,000 a year in profit. So it was a good living. But within 10 years of us working together, he had radically scaled the company. We're talking 11x the company. And the big part is he no longer was doing the direct consulting with clients anymore. He now had good people. He wasn't the one doing the sales anymore. He had good systems and good people. He was involved in some high-end negotiations and with the strategic leadership of his leadership team. But it's a very different part. You talk to Paul, I don't think he's going to want to sell his company. He could, but at least he gets to choose. And that choice is what I want for everybody here. I think that that's a really important part. So, yeah, I've talked about, I think I've talked about this enough. Alan, I want to leave it to questions that people have. So I'll start with this here. I've not used GoToWebinar in a little bit of time. So what questions are there that someone could, if you could help me moderate some of those questions that are in there, Alan? I can't quite see them. And as you're getting ready to do, oh, no, I've just found where it is. Thank you. It's just a different place. I've been so habituated the last 3, 4 years since the pandemic with Zoom. I stopped using GoToWebinar, so I'm a little constrained. So I'll start doing some of these questions around that have come in here in just a moment. But again, if you would like to join us for that event, please reach out to Alan's office. He's arranged a block of tickets, or put a quick chat in there for Maggie in the chat field. We'll get you information about it. It's at the Florida Hotel and Conference Center in Orlando. I know many of you that are on this particular webinar are in the, probably a 3-hour radius of driving there. We'd love to have you there. I think you'll find it'll be a great experience. Again, what's going to be covered at that event will be everything from how do you create breakthrough growth in your company, but how do you do that at the same time you mature your business so that it's not reliant on you, so that you can have real owner independence and growth, not one or the other. So one of the questions that came in here was, who else am I going to meet? I appreciate that. Who are we going to meet at the event? So let me give you a quick snapshot of what it's like there. So each of the days, you're going to find that there will be 4 what we call focused working sessions. The working sessions are going to have a portion of it where you're learning really good stuff, but then they'll have a tool around which you're going to use to apply it in your company. We're not going to just talk about leverage points for your growth, but we're going to have you do the tool so that over the course of 45 minutes, you can pinpoint the 2 biggest places for you in your company to create explosive growth. That would be an example for it. Hey, we're not going to just talk about strategic depth for 40 minutes. We're going to have you do a tool that helps you pick what are the 1, 2, or 3 things in the next 90 days, simple actions that you and your company can take to increase strategic depth so that your company is less reliant on you, would be an example. We're going to have, different working lunches wherein you'll get a chance in a structured way to meet other business owners. Really important to meet business owners outside your industry, outside your geography, because sometimes something that you're dealing with is something that they've already solved and they'll be willing to share, or you might have a vendor that you could share with them for a problem that you solved 2 years ago. We can do this for each other, and that's a really big point. That's why we bring our coaching staff. That's why we have so many of the advisors that we can get there, because you can have these rich conversations. And then on Friday night and Saturday night, we have some social functions going on. I think you'll have a great time. They're casual, but they're done in a way that it makes it easy to meet other business owners. Too many business owners, I talked about it earlier today, they build their businesses in isolation and it costs them. And in the case of the example I gave you, it cost this particular person millions of dollars and probably 2 to 3 years of just agony to go through litigation. I know maybe I shouldn't say this, Alan, but no one wins in litigation. Even when you win, you don't win with that part. I know all the attorneys out there have to put their kids through school and pay for braces and all those things, and that's great. And I've been in some litigation before, so I get the value of it. But if I could have avoided that, boy, I would have done. Second question came in about, David, what are the blind spots that cause me to think that I can't be replaced? I hear it all the time. David, I understand how a construction company could do this, but I own a medical practice. Then it's funny because the construction person says, well, I can understand how a manufacturer can do this, but I'm a construction guy. And the manufacturer says, I understand how a medical practice could do it, but how can I as a manufacturer? And everyone likes to hold on to this. Yes, I can see how other people could do it, but I'm special, unique. There's no way I could do that. And all I would say to that person is, well, we've done this with thousands of clients, so you're not unique. You absolutely are special, but the price for holding on to that uniqueness is you will be trapped in the business. If you're willing to open the door a crack for that belief that there's no way it could work for other people, but no way for you, just open it a crack. I promise you, at the Breakthrough Company event, we will open the door wide and you'll go, got it. Not only that, I've had 17 conversations with other business owners. One guy did it for a year. He's made himself a little bit better. This particular woman owns a company. She's been doing this now for 7 years. She now takes 12 weeks a year of vacation and only works 30 hours a week. Wow, I guess it is possible. And she's in my same industry. So that is important with that. Next question comes in, is it better to use a coach who's in my industry or a general coach? Good question. There's good and bad to both. Let me quickly give you the pros and cons. So there are industry-specific coaching programs. Alan, in your case, there are coaches who specialize in helping law firms grow. The advantage is if you are a early stage level 2 company, revenues 200,000, 500,000, an industry specific coach can really be a good thing because they can give you some of the industry specific systems that work. However, and I see this whether it's industry of law or automotive repair or real estate in construction, what happens with industry specific groups is that very quickly their clients cap out, and now their clients after 1, 2, or 3 years are at the top edge of their program, their community, and they are no longer receiving and getting pushed anymore. They're now the person trying to pull everybody else up, and yet they're still paying. So what you find, for example, in the Maui community, because we're across industries, number one, client who has a $15 million company who would be the biggest fish in the law, legal, or automotive pond of coaching, who wouldn't be getting lots of value anymore. They're no longer the big fish. We've got companies that are at 50 million, 100 million, 200 million in the program. And one of the best things about it is there's something unique that you see when you look at businesses across industries, both for us as a coaching company, but also you as a client when you meet people in other industries. So yes, you'll likely meet people in your industry as well, but there's a value to having a peer group beyond that. Number one, there's no competitive concerns. Number two, the ideas that someone brings from the outside, like for example, there was someone in the construction field that shared something with me, an AI tool that they use that is common in construction, but it's unheard of in professional services firms. And I was blown away by it. I never knew about that, right? So that's the advantage of cross-pollination. Plus, when your coach has done this in lots of different industries, he or she can give you better input. They're a better, more rounded person from that part. And then let's see here. The last question I'm seeing, 2 more questions. How do you find people to take over the roles that you're living in? Really good question. I appreciate that one that came in. The first thing you do is you say, I'm not going to get rid of my role by replacing me with somebody else. It's not a one-for-one change. Alan, I look at what you do. There's no one that's going to have your ability on the front end to have the experience to know how to hear a legal situation and know exactly the path to go. A friend of mine calls that elephant spotting. You know how to spot and strategize that, and you do it brilliantly well. But from there, you've done a really good job of using the other partner attorneys or associate attorneys or paralegals or the administrative staff that you have so that they can do some of the research that you used to have to do, that they can do some of the drafting that you used to have to do. Some of the systems that you have are really efficient to generate first or second drafts of certain types of documents. Now, what that does is, number one, it saves your clients lots of money. Yes, Alan, you're expensive in the marketplace. However, you're very judicious about staffing down the work in such a way that the blended cost is actually incredibly valuable. So you've gotten some of the pieces out of there. Plus, you've gotten yourself out of some of the management. You've gotten yourself out of this piece of the management, that piece of the management that, 10 years ago, you were probably doing a lot of it. And all things being truthful, you, me, and other people, we were doing all that work, but we were only doing some of it really well. Some of it we weren't skilled at. That's normal. So we start getting ourselves out of pieces. And we start by, and here's the counterintuitive part, Alan. We can look 2 places. Everyone thinks I want to get rid of the thing I don't know how to do. And that's true. But sometimes the first step is to get rid of the thing you know how to do that sucks up a lot of time, because it's easier for you to make sure that the person and system that is doing it well because you know it well. And once you get a little bit more breathing space, now we can look for how do I get rid of the things off my plate that I'm not good at and don't know how to do. But sometimes, the first place I'd say to people is, do you have a great executive assistant? That's the first place I'll say. They should save you 10, 15 hours a week right there with that part. So, Alan, last thing I'll just share for people, the event itself we're early right now, but the event somewhere time by probably early January, certainly by late January, will sell out. It has for each of the years. So if anyone's on here and wants to join us, please take advantage of this. Other people will be paying quite a bit of money for it. Your generosity to arrange that block of tickets for people is huge. So have them, reach out to Alan's office, or just let Maggie know right here in the chat function so she knows and she can help with that part as well. So Alan, that was everything that I wanted to cover. We're right at the 1 hour mark. Is there anything that I haven't covered that you want to make sure that we do here?
Well, after having worked with you personally and also represented dozens, if not well over 100 of your clients, I just want to say that everything that you covered here is the real rubber meets the road stuff. And we can all be enthusiastic about this and that and read the book of the week and all that, but it's real discipline to spend the time and have the quiet time and the brainstorming time to go through David's checklist and to work on each item. It's it's also very liberating to know that while you think you're trapped in a cage, it turns out you built your own cage and you've got the key to the door. You just don't realize it. So David has done a great job over a number of years figuring out how to explain to us that we have the key to the door. One door opens, there's more profit and more enjoyment of the business or the practice. Another door opens and you're out of the cage that you might have built yourself. So hats off, David, for having spent the decades that you've spent studying this and experimenting on me and your other hundreds of clients to make the program even better. I just think anyone who has the opportunity to go to this conference or an equivalent conference, if you've never been in a coaching environment, if you've never been in a business building environment, give this one a chance because it will be excellent. And the cocktail hours are very, very interesting as well.
Well, I really appreciate that, Alan. I'm laughing at I remember the first time I was at an event where you were at when the social. I'm like, wow, he's a great attorney. I knew all that, really smart, but I watched you on the social side. I'm like, wow, he really likes buddies, beer, and bands, right? That was fun to see with that. Just one last comment I have for people here, if I may just make it here. When we talked about today, we were talking about that $10 million barrier. But just to kind of give a heads up, what we'll start hitting at the breakthrough company, that 50 and $100 million barriers, what's needed is continual growth, but most importantly, time to compound that growth. And the way you have the time to compound that growth is to make the business more enjoyable for you, the owner. Because I see many people who sell at the 5 million, 10 million, 15 million, or 20 million because they're no longer liking it. They're burned out. That if the business was designed better and had matured along the way, like we've talked about, they easily would have stayed for another 5 or 10 years and they would have sold the company for probably 3 to 5 times more if they sold, or they just would have stayed in retirement owning passively a multi-million dollar profit stream, and leave the sale of the company down the road to, probably in their 70s or 80s or to their next generation if they wanted to. So that's one big thing. How do you go from $20 million to 200 million? Well, it's going to require some time to compound in addition to other concrete things. But the time element is the one that many business owners don't have because they simply feel like they have to sell it because of how draining or debilitating the way they've scaled it has been. And that's not because of of business in general. That's their manner of how they've historically ran the business. All right. Alan, and to everyone here, I want to say thank you for letting me join you for a little bit of your day. It was really a pleasure to be part of it here, Alan.
Thanks so much, David. Thanks for what you do for everyone. If anyone has any questions, you can email me, email David, and have a fantastic rest of your day.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Take care.